I stand resolved. The United States federal government should substantially increase online privacy protections for United States citizens. To support this resolution, I offer the following plan. The United States federal government should pass legislation prohibiting all organizations from collecting any personally identifiable information without express permission from an individual. My first contention is that we have an ethical duty to protect people's right to privacy for the following reasons. First, I have a legal right to my intellectual property. These companies are collecting my data because it has a monetary value to them, but the data was generated by me and is about me, so it is my intellectual property. In other words, they're stealing, and it is unethical to allow stealing. This has an actual cost. The New York Times profiled a company that lets individuals sell their data. Users voluntarily download software that tracks their online activity. A personal dashboard lets them limit what gets sold. Users will be able to earn a wide range of perks for their information. Next, other liberties are impossible without privacy. If I don't know who is collecting information about me, then I won't be able to act uninhibited. If I can't control that information, I will similarly be forced to blend with the mass. According to Goldman, director of the ACLU Project on Privacy and Technology, a person's right to control personal information is at the heart of individual freedom, autonomy, and individuality. Crucial to one's sense of self is the right to maintain some decision-making power over what information to divulge to whom and for what purpose. The danger is that a watched society is a conformist society, one in which people are afraid to act or believe in ways that call attention to themselves. A person whose every need, thought, desire, fancy, or gratification is subject to public scrutiny has been deprived of individuality and human dignity. Such an individual merges with the masses. Those opinions being public tend never to be different. Such a being, although sentient, is fungible and is not an individual. Last, anonymous political discourse is essential to a functioning democracy and should be protected. In the status quo, trackers can create a detailed fingerprint of users even if they take every precaution to remain anonymous. Thus, if the government or website owner doesn't like a particular dissident, they can come close to outing the exact individual. Tien, a lawyer from UC Berkeley, writes, online anonymous speech deserves First Amendment protection. McIntyre must be understood as protecting the cheap speech of dissenters. The internet is a cheap speech medium. Second, the principle of speaker autonomy implies that speech includes not only the speaker and speech medium, but society as large. Third, to view speech as discursive interaction is also to view speech as interaction, and identity is crucial to interaction. Next, since my opponent will argue that privacy decreases technological innovation, my second contention is that privacy protections will increase technological innovation. This is a unique advantage because technological innovation is decreasing now. Everyone is making trivial apps that focus on invasive social technologies. The problem goes to the level of funders as well. Forbes profiled Peter Thiel and Max Levchin, founders of PayPal and investors, in 2011. Just look at the number of VCs who beat the clean tech drum for years only to spend the majority of their time today buying up late shares of Facebook. His venture firm allocates half its capital to consumer internet companies like photo sharing service Path and Yammer. Levchin was quick to call out the number of Me Too startups in the Valley today. You're not solving a very hard problem. A questionable point coming from an entrepreneur who used the skills he acquired building PayPal to start yet another photo sharing app. Next, privacy will increase innovation by making consumers feel safer using products. Right now, consumers are failing to use products because of concerns about invasive data collection. Privacy laws wouldn't stop companies from doing cool things, they would just bring companies in line with their users. According to a study by Pew Research Center's Internet and American Life project in 2012, 54% of app users have decided not to install a cell phone app when they discovered how much personal information they would need to share in order to use it. Next, privacy will increase the spread of information internationally, particularly to countries with strict privacy laws such as Germany. Otherwise, these countries will use their own companies that they can regulate. According to Pacific Standard in 2011, a we don't care attitude about privacy from the United States would create major risks for American jobs, exports, and businesses, including cloud computing, said Swire, a senior fellow at the Center for American Progress. The cloud must include EU-like privacy protections. Countries could come to regard the U.S. as a non-compliance zone. Foreign competitors could use the lack of U.S. privacy protections as an excuse for protectionism. Counterplan, the United States federal government should require U.S. companies to follow the EU Data Protection Directive of 2006 when concerning data about EU citizens. This is net beneficial because it wouldn't reduce the ability of companies to innovate when making products for U.S. consumers. This is their own source concludes that this is a solution to export problems. According to the Pacific Standard in 2011, EU-based clouds controlled by U.S. tech companies are still, it seems, subject to U.S. laws. If the U.S. government invoked protections of the USA Patriot Act, Microsoft would be compelled both to hand over data to U.S. authorities and keep the data transfer secret. This contravened the EU Data Protection Directive of 2006. My concerns are about the storage of data in multiple jurisdictions, said a Netherlands-based lawyer. Now on innovation. First, the offense. Privacy legislation would reduce the effectiveness of online advertising by half, decreasing income of startups, news organizations, and big tech companies. This hinders innovation, and empirical studies prove it, according to Castro, a senior analyst of the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation in 2010. Many of the websites that millions of Americans depend on for work and play would not be around today without online advertising. In fact, the top 5 websites all used online advertising. Online advertising will be important for the so-called long tail of small websites and content producers supported by ad revenues. One way websites gain more value from online advertising is providing more relevant ads. Target ads based on information about a user, such as the user's browsing history or other user-specific data, help deliver higher value ads. Data privacy regulations would limit the ability of internet publishers to tailor advertising to users based on interests. Beals, a professor at George Washington and former director of Bureau of Consumer Protection, has described how advertising rates for online ads that use behavioral targeting were significantly higher than online advertising that did not use behavioral targeting. A new research by University of Toronto and MIT documents how privacy laws can negatively impact advertising. Goldfarb and Tucker analyzed the impact of the EU's privacy directive after the new privacy laws went into effect. They resulted in the average reduction in the effectiveness of online ads by approximately 65%. Revenue for online display advertising could fall by more than half. It is therefore not surprising that US internet companies would leave the world and European companies do not. Next, it's hard to tell what is personally identifiable. For instance, if my email address is connected to my Facebook account, then it is likely personally identifiable, even if a browser timestamp could create a unique fingerprint. Thus, legislation about personally identifiable information would have a chilling effect on data mining and data collection of all forms. Next, data mining provides benefits across industries, but will focus on education in particular. West, Vice President of Governance Studies and founding director at the Center for Technology Innovation at Brookings, argues in 2012 current school evaluations suffer from several limitations. Data-driven approaches make it possible to study learning in real time and offer systematic feedback to students and teachers. Big data make it possible to mine learning information for insights regarding student performance and learning approaches. Rather than rely on periodic test performance, instructors can analyze what students know and what techniques are most effective for each pupil. By focusing on data analytics, teachers can study learning in far more nuanced ways. Now onto their points. They say innovation in software is decreasing, but their only example is social computing, which is extremely innovative. Also, the Castro evidence from before shows how US companies are currently the most innovative in high-tech in the world. They say that users' privacy concerns are impacting innovation, but there's a difference between users claiming to care about something and users actually believing it. Everyone complains about Facebook's privacy policies, but still uses Facebook. This is true in e-commerce as well. Even without an opt-in, users will still use products. According to a 2012 study by Forrester Research, while consumers are concerned about security and few deem online retailers wholly trustworthy, their concerns aren't stopping them from shopping on the web. The report recommends that companies clearly explain to consumers how they're using that data and how to use that data benefits the consumer. Next, they say that German companies won't use US tech products, but our counterplan solves that. Now on ethics. First, our offense. Utilitarianism is the best ethical philosophy for 3 reasons, according to Isaac, professor of political science. An unyielding concern with moral goodness suffers from 3 fatal flaws. 1, the purity of one's intention does not ensure the achievement of what one intends. 2, it fails to see that in a world of real violence, injustice, moral purity is complicity to injustice. 3, it fails to see that politics is just as much about unintended consequences as it is about intentions. It is often the pursuit of good that generates evil. Even if we lose the utilitarianism debate, a rule-based ethical system would conclude against privacy legislation. Even if privacy is morally good, using government coercion to enforce it is immoral. Waldron, 86. The mistake is to convert moral pressure into compulsion, to force people to do what everybody agrees it would be morally desirable for them to do. Most liberals base their belief in toleration and civil rights in part on the irrationality and immorality of forcing people to do something merely on the ground that it is believed to be morally desirable. The libertarian argument is that even if charity is morally desirable, indeed even if in some sense it is a moral duty, it is nevertheless wrong to require people by threat of legal penalties to give up their wealth for redistribution to the poor. Now onto their points. They say that they own the data and it's valuable, but the company in their article isn't even established yet, so there isn't any real value. Second, intellectual property isn't physical property. If I use data about somebody else, that person doesn't lose the data. Freely sharing things that are easy to copy creates a globally beneficial commons. Next, they say privacy is key to liberty, but their argument incorrectly identifies human nature as individualistic rather than social. However, humans are social animals. We don't endorse Aristotle's gendered language, but Aristotle writes in Politics, man is by nature a social animal. An individual who is unsocial is either beneath our notice or more than human. Society is something that precedes the individual. Anyone who can either cannot lead the common life or is so self-sufficient as to not need to, and therefore does not partake in society, is either a beast or a god. This has a few implications. First, if privacy currently shapes an individual's sense of self, then that's bad. People have a flawed sense of self if they think that unsocial activities are meaningful. Second, we make more things public, which means more things meaningful. They argue that this would decrease human dignity, but dignity is rooted in publicness. When people grumble privately, it's vitriolic. When people grumble publicly, we have a social movement. Third, they identify danger associated with making public statements. We can see that there's a risk associated with everything meaningful. We shouldn't throw out the baby with the bathwater. Next, they say anonymous political discourse is key to democracy, but cross-apply the point above about political discourse. First, on ethics, they say that there doesn't exist a company to sell the data to, but we'll concede that. Next, they say that humans are social animals. We'll concede that. We still allow for publicness. We don't force people to be more private than they are now. We still let people engage in the same public dialogues that they would in the status quo. Next, they say that the political speech was answered above, but extend our TN evidence. This is the argument that anonymous political discourse is key to democracy. They way mishandled this. There are two key points to take away from this. First is the law. The Constitution is more consistent with our framework of more privacy than with their framework of less privacy. What this means is that if we want to uphold the Constitution, then we should continue with the affirmative plan. Second, the cheap speech is key to democracy. This means that even when people are engaging in social movements publicly, it's still important for them to have things like Twitter that's anonymous so that they can organize and so that they can get mobilization in the first place. Next, they read Isaac's evidence about utilitarianism, but this is non-responsive. Democracy is good, and privacy will achieve democracy. In other words, we still have an end. It's not just about the means. But second, a framework of rule utilitarianism would still conclude affirmative. We shouldn't compromise on the Constitution for the sake of supposed innovation. We should try to hold to these principles in the end. Next, they read Waldron about coercion for privacy. But there's a difference between action and inaction. We prevent people from doing bad things rather than forcing them to do good things, and which means that Waldron isn't criticizing our affirmative plan. And also, they don't have any justification for this. If their Isaac's evidence about utilitarianism is true, then coercion for a good end could still be good. Now on to the innovation debate. First, they say that social is innovative, but this is exactly what we're criticizing. There are a ton of social things, but that is but everybody is just a Me Too startup. Everybody is more or less doing the same thing that Facebook has, but just for a slightly different industry. There aren't enough startups around infrastructure, around health, around education. There are a lot of really big unsolved problems that are facing the world that are not just solving for little first world problems. Next, they say that users claim to care but don't actually care, but even if this is true, it would still be good. Even if users are still using Facebook, that doesn't mean that Facebook should get worse with their privacy policy. We should have companies be more in line with what users actually want. Also, their study was about online shopping, but online shopping is different. We're talking about really important things like personal genomics. Personal genomics is a lot different from online shopping because if somebody knows my entire genome, that's a lot different from if somebody knows what I bought on Amazon. Next, they say that the counterplan solves for Germany. We'll concede this. Next, they say that there's a decrease of income for startups if we had more privacy regulations, but their focus on consumer internet startups is bad because things like infrastructure, things like healthcare for hospitals don't rely on advertising because they work off of already existing industries. They make the world better in ways other than just getting people to click on new things for their pets. Next, they say there's a chilling effect, but we can specify exactly what this personally identifiable information would be. It wouldn't have to remain that vague. And they say that it would benefit education, but this is misattributing what we're doing. The status quo isn't solving for education because there are already privacy regulations for dealing with kids, which means that there's no difference about education with the plan versus with the status quo. First an overview, then the ethics debate, and then innovation. For the overview, first, if we win utilitarianism, then you'll vote for the negative on innovation because online ads are essential to innovation, and innovation is the most important thing in the round. Second, if you don't buy utilitarianism, we have an ethical imperative to promote publicness. Promoting privateness comes at the expense of publicness. Now on the ethics debate. First, extend that humans are social animals. They facilitate privateness, which makes it easier for people to do meaningless things. They make the argument that they still allow for publicness, but their example there is the Twitter example, but collectivism is worse than nothing because it makes people feel like they're doing something when they aren't. This placates people's desires for publicness and will reduce their actual public activities, which reduces people's self-actualization. That's the Aristotle evidence. On the anonymous political discourse point, they say that it's the law, but it isn't illegal. It's not our jobs as students to interpret the Constitution. If you believe in the law and you believe in what they're saying, then you should leave that up to the Supreme Court, which hasn't ruled this unconstitutional. Their next point is that cheap speech is key to democracy, but that's the collectivism point above. Next, they say utilitarianism, but we're winning democracy, which means that their democracy point on rule utilitarianism isn't responsive. And also, our innovation advantage outweighs. They're arguing this point from a utilitarian standpoint, but they never provide any reason why democracy is better than having constant innovations in healthcare and education, and even in things like civics. Look at organizations like Move On or Avaz. And then they say rule utilitarianism from a constitutional standpoint, but we're activating utilitarianism in pure and simple, not rule utilitarianism. Rule util has all of the same problems that we identified earlier. It's just getting farther away from utilitarianism. The intent doesn't always achieve the outcomes, and the moral impurity is complicity to injustice. And next, they attack the Waldron evidence, but we'll concede that. Now on innovation, they say that it would still be good for users, but the counterplan means that they'll go in line with both sets of customers. So, for instance, it's not just about online shopping, but personal genomics companies already have strong privacy policies. So their counterexample doesn't hold. So it still is true that users will shop online and that the users don't actually care about this. In the world where there are two standards, one for Germany and one for the US, companies can tailor their offerings to whichever group of people they want to tailor it to. Now on the ads debate, they say that focus on consumer internet startups is bad, but startups need every source of income they can get. And also their point about infrastructure is false. For example, infrastructure does need ads. For example, Google Maps is a form of infrastructural innovation that relies on ads. Also personalized health things like WebMD or educational apps for students. Now on the chilling effect, they say that it can be specified, but that doesn't mean it is. We outlined gray areas that they didn't have any specific answers to, which means that they're just waving something nebulous in your face. You shouldn't look to that as evidence. Now on the education point, they say that the status quo can't solve this because of privacy regulations, but the privacy regulations like COPPA only apply to kids who are under age 13, and even for kids above that age, we can still provide a ton of products, and this is especially true given things that are happening like Coursera and Udacity and edX now. First an overview, then innovation. Overview, they say that innovation is the most important thing in the round and that utilitarianism is their default framework. We can see that, so the ethics debate goes away. We'll win on the innovation debate. The big mistake that they make in this round is conceding the uniqueness evidence that innovation is currently stagnating. Let's go there now. First, extend that evidence, the Thiel and Levitch evidence from Forbes. They conceded this, which means that in this debate round, it's true. Innovation has stagnated in important areas like health, education, infrastructure, and the status quo is failing, thus it's try or die. It's a broken system, so we should try to do something to fix it. You should be skeptical of any of their evidence that the plan would make things worse because things are already bad. This means we only need to win a risk that privacy might make things better, and we'll win the round. For instance, they try to say that targeted ads are key, but if that were true, then status quo ads would be working and innovation wouldn't have stagnated. They give examples of consumer-focused startups relying on ads, but maybe the consumer-focused part is the problem. They should be more business-to-business organizations, more business-to-government organizations. This means that even their chilling effect argument is offense for us. If the status quo is bad, then a huge disruption in the way that people collect data might be a good thing. Similar deal on education. If the status quo education space were amenable to all of these great changes, then why is every edtech startup doing the same exact thing? We need more privacy focus. We need more of a shift away from these current ad-driven things and towards something that is really innovative rather than just being a Me Too startup. If any of their evidence were more specific to this point, then they would have a chance, but they can see the uniqueness, which means that we win the round.